this video I will show you my 4 months earnings with Airqino, explain the Type 1 rewards and also look at the saturation point for this sensor. So we will find out if it's too late or not to buy one. Coming right up. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Lawrence from My Passive Hunt because he's the one that suggested making this video. So let's start with an overview. Airqino is the Type 1 PlanetWatch sensor. That means a scientific grade outdoor sensor. If you want to find more about it or how to install it, watch my unboxing and setup videos. Links in the top right corner and in the description below. So the earnings are based on tiers, which represents locations and on status of the sensor. So let's start with location. Tier 1 represents heavily populated areas and Tier 2 are the rest of the locations. How can you tell if a location is a Tier 1 or Tier 2? For that, we'll go to planetwatch.io and click on check your air quality. This will open the PlanetWatch map. The next step is to either search for your location using the search bar or manually move the map. Once we are in a location, make sure your zoom level is at least 11. From this level on, we will see a grid and the Tier 1 button becomes enabled. This represents the pixels of the project. Once we enable the button, Tier 1, all the purple pixels are Tier 1 locations and the rest, as you probably guessed, are Tier 2 locations. Now going back to the white paper, what are lead and backup sensors? PlanetWatch rules state that for each pixel, only one Type 1 sensor can be a leader and any other Type 1 sensors fall into the backup category. So if only one sensor is in a given pixel, that sensor will get 100% of the reward. If there are any backup sensors, they will get 10% each and the rest will go to the lead sensor. So for Type 1 sensors, the one sensor with the highest local reputation score is the one that gets the lead title. How does this reputation score get calculated? Well, for each day that the sensor sends at least 50% of the required valid data streams, it will get 1 point. If not, it will lose 1 point. Also, each sensor will get a 100 Pioneer bonus reputation points in the place where it first activated, if it is the first active sensor there and if it will stream data for at least 30 days. So to sum it up, as long as you are the first in that pixel, your sensor will be the lead. If you move it to another pixel, it will be the lead as long as there isn't any sensors already there. And how can we determine if there are any other sensors in the pixel where we want to put ours? Simple. Going back to the map, making sure that we are at least at zoom level 11 in our location in order to see the grid but not have the Tier 1 button activated. Any colored pixel hints at an outdoor sensor active there. If we click on that pixel, we can see the active sensors. So make sure to not already be an active Type 1 sensor where you want to put yours. In conclusion, the best place right now is the Tier 1 location lead status with 133.3 planets max reward. The second best place is a Tier 2 pixel lead status that gets 66 planet as maximum reward. As a backup in a Tier 1 pixel, we get a mere 13.3, so whatever you do, avoid the backup status. It's better to be a lead in a Tier 2 than a backup in a Tier 1. Now you're probably asking, especially in the wear element context, how many planets does an Airqino actually make? And to sum it over, I will make an average over the 4-month period since I had my sensor. So in 121 days, my Airqino made 20,120 planets, which means 166 planets per day. And we know that we get 80% of those rewards, which leads to an average of 133 planets daily reward out of a 133.3 maximum one. As you can see, almost perfect reward. And bonus, because of my setup with a UPS, once again linked in the top right corner to my Airqino setup video, I never have to worry about power outages or whatnot. And if you look at the current price of planets, my sensor made me 4,132 euros or $4,689. Now you probably know that I am holding most of my planets as I see this as an investment. But this is the amount of planets and this is the current value of what this sensor made in the past 121 days for me. And talking about money and investments, I want to explain the saturation point on Airqino and if it's too late or not to invest now in one. So I can't predict when the rewards will drop. What I will do is present how the reward budget is working, and based on the numbers that we know, we can make some projections. They will be 100% wrong, but it will help us get a range where the reality might be. I think the best way to explain how the reward, saturation points and recycle bin are working is through an analogy. Let's say that we have a daily budget of $100 and we are willing to pay up to $1 for a worker. That allows us to employ up to 100 workers with a $1 cost per worker. We can't pay 200 or 500 workers with a $1 cost because we only have $100 budget to pay each day. The number of workers where we reach the limit of the budget, in our example 100 workers, is what is called the saturation point in PlanetWatch. So going back to an actual numbers, we see that we have about 410,000 planet daily budget for tier 1 for type 1 and around 176,000 planets for tier 2, again for type 1. And the saturation points are 2,479 sensors for tier 1 and 2,107 sensors for tier 2. What about a recycle bin? Going back to our story with workers, let's say that 200 workers want to work for us, but we only have $100 to pay them daily. So we can equally split that budget to all the workers and they all get $0.5 each. The more workers want to work for us, the payment for each will be less, proportional to the number of workers. But here is where the recycle bin comes in. Let's say that we want as many workers for us, and in the early days only a few decide to work for us. But the daily budget is still $100 no matter what. So we save all the unpaid dollars in a deposit, and we do so for each day that we don't get to spend all the budget on active workers. When more workers than 100 want to work for us, we can use the deposit money alongside the daily budget in order to pay everyone with the maximum $1. So if today we have 200 workers active, we get a daily 100% budget and we take from the deposit the remaining $100 needed in order to pay everyone $1. This happens as long as there is money in that deposit. When the deposit is empty, we will need to split the daily budget to all the active workers. So going back to PlanetWatch, this deposit is what we call the recycle bin, and we know exactly how many planets there are in each one. So going to PlanetWatch Explorer, link in the description below, we see that right now we have about 98 million planets in the recycle bin for type 1 tier 1 and around 48 million planets for type 1 tier 2. And because the number of sensors is below the saturation point, we have 191,170 planets added today in these two recycle bins. Now we have no idea when the recycle bin will be empty, especially since they are still filling up. This will depend on how many sensors will be onboarded and how fast. What we can do is try to understand how big the recycle bins are right now, and that might give us an idea about the future. So let's see how fast will this recycle bin get emptied in a few cases. In order to make some calculations, I decided to do this spreadsheet where I have put a couple of things. So we see that we have the daily budget. These are numbers that I took from the white paper, the saturation points for each tier, maximum rewards, and the amount of recycled bin that are the moment of the recording. Now I'm probably asking, why are these rewards and not 133 and 66 planets? Because when it comes to calculations, we are using the reward that we get for the sensor overall. I see a lot of people making this mistake of calculating with 133 planets when we should be using the whole reward. because this is how all the calculations are done. So for example, if we were to have at the moment of the recording twice the number of saturation points. So I also wanted to show you how I made these calculations. It's a pretty basic algorithm. So as we can see, we are basically multiplying the number of sensors with the maximum reward, and then we are going to subtract the daily budget, because as we know, daily budget always works. The recycle bin kicks in and gives the additional planets that we need in order to support the maximum reward for the total number of sensors. So that's why we subtract the daily budget, and then we remain practically with the number of planets that we need to subtract from the recycle bin in order to sustain the maximum reward for all the sensors. So we just divide the total number of planets that we have currently in the recycle bin to that daily withdrawal, and we end up, in case of twice the number of saturation points of the sensors, with 240 days and 275 days for each tier. That will last for around 8 months and 9 months for tier 1 and tier 2. Of course, these numbers, they will be wrong, because the number of sensors will not stay at this number almost no day. They will continue to grow the number of sensors in the network. These are just numbers for us to have a sense of what's going on. So I think it's pretty safe to say that we might have something like this, even better or worse, but I think around 8 or 9 months, it's a pretty decent number. Why? Because at the moment of the recording, we are looking at 1525 sensors. These are for both tier 1 and tier 2, so they are combined. So we are not even close to the saturation point. So this recycle bin will continue to grow. So let's see if, for example, we will have 10,000 sensors. Let's say the network will grow very quick and very aggressive. So let's say at 10,000 sensors, we would get 2.5 months for each tier. But once again, we are at the moment of the recording dealing with 10 times as less sensors. So I think that it will take a while, even with a very aggressive growth, to get to this number, and even at this number with the current recycle bin, we will still have some time. And more than that, we know that 40% of the capital that PlanetWatch acquires through data cells will go to the sensor owners and 40% to the recycle bins. So we will still see them active in the future. It's not a one-time deal. So in conclusion, is it too late to get a type 1 sensor? In my opinion, no. First, because we have so many planets in the recycle bins, and each day are still getting additional planets at the moment of the recording. Second, because this is the premium sensor of the network, and most likely owners will get additional rewards through data cells in time. And third, because we know that PlanetWatch wants to onboard new sensors and to reduce the waiting time for buying a type 1 sensor. And more than that, I think a lot of people are focusing way too much on the ROI and the planets that they get today. The real profits will come in time if we keep at least a part of the tokens that we earn, and the project will continue to expand. If we sell all the planets that we get at 35-45 cents, that is a sure way to make a quick buck, but also a sure way to miss the potential earnings from this project. That's it for this video. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned. Until next time, see ya!